This is the episode that you all been waiting for. Well, not all of you, but some. People want to be able to point the motherfucking finger at someone. Some people like to point the finger, right? A lot of people I've met through my life journey, most people like to point at everyone else rather than themselves, those bitch-ass motherfuckers. But I'm going to reveal a secret to y'all. If you're human, you're all fucking guilty. That's right. I could pull off enough evidence to be able to talk for hours about how bad and guilty you are in association to who or whatever else, right? This episode will be one of the episodes that I was referring to when I talked about how things were going to get dark, right? In regards to Christopher Columbus, blood and death and punishments. A lot of people like to base historical events based off of today's standards and morals, right? This episode will be one that gets the people's feathered feet off the seats and protesting, knocking down statues and reciting their opinion as if it's worth more than others, right? Can you fucking handle this shit? Does this channel make you sad? Then you don't need to be here. That's right. I nor anyone else is forcing you to give an ear to this channel. YouTube definitely isn't doing it. They're sharing an episode to 25 people, which some of them are already fucking subscribers. That's not the way you're supposed to do it. The fuck? That's not the way you're supposed to talk. Supposed to do it. You're not supposed to say that kind of stuff to people. Yeah, fuck you. Not supposed to say that. Oh, this hurts my feelings. Oh, he just called me fucking names. He's not a comedian unless he makes me laugh. Why doesn't he do like everybody else? Is this a history channel or a comedy channel? This guy's a joke. That's what some of these people are saying. The only thing funny about this motherfucker is that he thinks he's funny, right? Bitch-ass motherfuckers. It's a history channel where we go over memoirs, documents, and analyze perspectives and different history books, while sometimes using cross-references, right? And sometimes referring to some of the latest news articles on various subjects, right? And articles. And if these ideas were subject to academics, would it have to be heard in a monotone fucking voice? Do I have to put on a serious face when I'm talking about this bitch-ass history stuff? What if I made some jokes here and there? Would it hurt your feelings? Does it depend on who I make fun of or how I make fun of them to be able to do it, right? To be allowed? Any of these fucking listeners crying? I bet you there is. Like Bill Maher said about being politically correct, or Jordan Peterson said about hate speech, that it's impossible not to offend everyone. And if you have like 100 people in an audience, at least one of them is going to disagree with what you said and call it hate speech. Maybe if there's only 10 people in a room, you're more likely to at least offend one person. And they call it hate speech. If you talk long enough, at least one of those fucking 10 people is going to disagree with you. Maybe all of them. With at least one thing you said. So where the fuck do you draw the line then, huh? There's going to be someone that says, oh, I can do better than this guy, this bitch ass. I would say better things. I wouldn't talk like this asshole. I would be liked by everyone. That's what you think, right? You are politically correct, and nothing you say is considered hate speech as long as your mind is in line with the angry majority, right? Step in line, bitches. Stand where you're supposed to fucking stand. I won't. Yeah, fuck me, right? Fuck this channel and fuck you. How's that sound? Mostly fuck you, right? This channel is far from a safe space for you. So you better start running now. Don't subscribe. Don't thumbs up, down. Just get out. Okay, anyways, let's do this. This is the episode y'all been waiting for. I'm going to build up to the point of your wants, right? But since this channel focuses on an elaborate description of day-by-day account from one guy or another, one person from another, or another time with another, at least one source or another, this episode is going to start at a point where I bet a lot of you would find it boring or irrelevant. But go fuck yourself, right? Like I said before, this is a history channel, not a propaganda channel. I'm not going to try to give blanket terms over some shit and ideas that label people or an epoch in a time or in order to push an agenda, but rather just observing the interesting times in history. Oh yeah, you forgot about that one, didn't you? And of course, we would see things through the lens of today, but so we wouldn't be able to fully understand the rationale of the past because we're seeing through the eyes of the lenses of today. But at least we can observe those interesting ideas. And if modernism blocked our perception of the past, then why even fucking try, right? Go fuck yourself. Sit down and shut up. Now let's move on. You're shaking your head right now like a box of rocks. You hear the noise echoing that through the empty space that you held above your shoulders. And get mad, you bitch. They did it. Now it's your turn. Get mad. Listen to those cunts outside with their fucking stupid ass mufflers. You hear me? You hear me? On May 14th in the year 1494, Columbus and crew reached the cape of the coast of Cuba, in which Columbus named Santa Cruz. It was on a Wednesday. Like you give a fuck. There were terrible storms that came and shallow spots at sea that made it hard for the Europeans. And they tried to find safety, and they found some areas amongst the groups of islets that Columbus called El Jardín de la Reina. And there were so many of them that he didn't want to singly name them all, but instead label the group. They counted near 160 of these islets that had deep enough water around them so the Christians could be safe and sail in between them. I saw a lot of birds and other animals in these areas. They came to an area where they spotted a canoe, to where they got close enough to signal to the guy in the canoe who was fishing. And the fucking interesting thing is, these motherfuckers, these Indians used to take the fish that the Spaniards called remora, and the Indians would tie a string to the back of the fish, then throw it in the water while waiting for some bigger fish to take the bait. And I guess the heads of the fish had like some kind of sticky spot on them that they would stick to the other fish, and then they just pull the other bigger fish up. The Europeans thought this was fucking weird, but it actually sounds kind of cool. They tied a thin cord to the tail of a fish to catch larger fish. Fucking interesting. Like some women, right? They take something small, like your penis, then they move on to your bank account. Something small, and they move something bigger. Right? Great idea. Tying a fish to a string. Newer women of today are like that. They're just like that, aren't they? Maybe not, because women are making more money nowadays. So they don't fucking need your money or your dick. They just go on Tinder and find somebody else, right? Because they got enough money and dick, right? Anyways, Columbus waved the fishermen Indians over to the ship, and they came aboard. And Columbus told everyone not to take anything from the Indians that tried to give the Europeans things. Just take the fish. That's it. I guess the generosity that the Indians had must have been like a usual thing on the islands due to the quantity or abundance of things there, I'm guessing. But Columbus ordered not to take anything that was offered besides some fish that the Indians had caught. And the Indians described how the area had a lot of different islands all around, and Columbus was very curious and surprised by the descriptions. And sometime after hanging out with the Native American fishermen, Columbus sent the Indians off with gifts. And I guess he said that the Indians highly delighted It highly delighted these guys, and they're just like, man, this is great shit. It's like, man, he doesn't even know. Well, that's at least what he described, right? That's what they described. I don't know what they gave him. So the Europeans sailed on. Columbus was exhausted, and at some point Columbus was telling everyone how tired and dirty he was. That Christopher Columbus hadn't taken a fucking shower. No, he didn't say that. It said that Columbus hadn't taken off his clothes or laid in his bunk since he had left Spain. That's fucking crazy, right? Columbus left Cadiz with 17 ships and 12 to 15,000 people aboard to the Americas on September 25th in 1493. So from these writing, the fucking dude didn't wash his balls or take his clothes off for near 8 fucking months. Isn't that crazy? He might have smelled like rotten eggs and fish, right? Otherwise, like the author James Hamblin says, maybe Columbus didn't smell at all, and that the natural oils of his body kept him healthy and fine. We will never know unless you try. Try not washing your balls for a year and see how that works for you. See what happens. Research people that don't bathe. They exist. They're still out there. There's lots of these people out there. These fucking cunts driving down the street, you hear them? They got these loud fucking things. They just want to be loud just to annoy you. Some girls like that shit, and it doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, let's move on here. So yeah, there's people that don't bathe. There, lots of people out there, and they only wash their hands and their ass, I guess, right? Maybe their face. The Europeans probably did something similar to that back in the day. Anyways, Columbus explained that he had not slept for 8 nights due to some illness he had at the time. I can't imagine someone's perception or demeanor if they hadn't slept in a week. Fucking crazy. I would assume that it would be like an acid trip, I guess, right? Start seeing shit. Is it possible to fucking work like that? Being overtired, unshowered, sick and unhealthy? Is it possible to have a clean mind and good thoughts at that point? Could he think straight, right? It's kind of fucking crazy. But how was he sailing around with no sleep? Didn't know that doctors now recommend 8 hours? But I guess Elon Musk doesn't think so, and neither does Barack Obama. I think they only sleep a few hours a night as well. But Columbus said he only slept a few hours a week. That's fucking crazy. Anyways, Columbus reached the island of, he named Santa Maria on the 22nd of May in 1494. And that was on a Thursday. When the Christians made their way to land, all the Indians ran away into the woods. And Columbus wanted to talk to them and inspect the island, but all the Indians fled for some fucking reason. Like some other islands, same thing. Some island the Indians were cool and some fucking ran away. So Columbus was like, fuck it, let's go. Let's go back to Cuba. So when they got to a particular part of Cuba, when they left, to get some clean water, they got to Cuba, and the Christians sent a sailor to go fetch some water and hunt for some fucking animals and for food and shit, right? And the sailor said that he came to a spot where he saw 30 Indians with spears and weapons that they called macanas. And the sailor said that the sailor said that he had seen one of the Indians who had a white robe on that reached to his knees, and a couple other men with robes that reached all the way to the fucking ground, right? A white robe. Amongst these Indians. And the sailor said that the 3 robed men had white skin as white as the Europeans. He's like, who the fuck are those guys? The sailor was afraid to talk to these people, so since there were so many of these people with Indian soldiers. So the sailor called off to his comrades to come and see what he had witnessed. But when the Indians and the robed men heard the sailor call off to his people, the Indians ran off. They're like, fuck this, we're out of here. And he's like, dude, they were just right over there, man. Anyways, the next day, Columbus sent some of his men to search for these people and to see if the sailor was telling the truth or not. But the area off the island was so muddy and fucking swampy and forest that they couldn't get around it easily. So they're just like, fuck it. You know what? Fuck it. Let's get out of here. So anyways, the Christians sailed on. They came across a beach with more Indians who were generous and tried to give a lot to the Christians. And Columbus had one of the Indians stay on board. He's like, I want to go. He's like, fuck that, you're staying here. He's like, no, man. He's like, no, you're staying here. Columbus wanted the Indian to stay onto the ship and tell him about the fucking area and give him insight what was going on. And Columbus said, after you show me around and tell me about the stuff, he's like, I'll let you go. And the Indian's like, okay, cool. If you let me go free up, that's fine. So the Indian was content with that idea. This Indian then finally convinced Columbus that Cuba was in fact an island, and that the cacique of the western area of the island spoke to his people by signs rather than by mouth. And people would obey him this way. He's like, and he's fucking moving his hands around and shit. And people are like, what does he mean? He means go fight there. Yeah, right. So anyways, after this time, Columbus made his way back to Hispaniola. And on their journey, they stopped on the eastern part of Cuba and had mass on their way to Hispaniola. And they were like, fuck it, we'll stop here. And these religious people were not playing around. They're just like, fuck it, we got to pray. He's like, stop the boat. Let's get out. Let's pray. They worked hard, but they did their fucking church stuff, right? It's interesting, yeah. I once saw a Muslim dude praying on the ground in a McDonald's parking lot. People are real serious about this shit. Religious people are weird. But anyways, some Indian cacique came to the religious gathering and watched the Christians have mass there on the eastern part of Cuba. The Christians later talked to this ruler of the area, and this Indian ruler told the Christians about how he talked about his religion and what he thought, like that what happens when the body dies, saying that the body stays on earth and the spirit is lifted up to heaven and the bad people go to hell. And anyways, this is what was written. I don't know. I think the Christians might be making up the story. I don't know. It is possible though that they thought this. Believe it or not, I don't know. This happened in early July of 1494. So anyways, the Europeans traveled on, weak and hungry, and the only thing the sailors had to consume was rotten biscuits and wine. And sometimes they would catch a fish, but the fish went rotten really quick in like less than a day because the climate in the area was so fucking hot and humid. So the Europeans were worn out. And on July 18th, the Christians made it to Cabo de la Cruz, to where Indians came out to the ship and gave the Europeans cassava bread and other types of food that the Europeans described as better food than the other Indians of other islands had. So like, this shit's fucking good, man. Let's have some more of it. The Indians in the canoe would also follow the ship again, like I mentioned before. And the Europeans would drive their ship down the coast, and the Indians would, drive on the side with their little log fucking canoes and be like, hey, man, have some more food. It's like, dude, I'm full already. He's like, yeah. Pretty interesting. Like I said, some Indians, some tribes were really generous, and other tribes would fucking run away as soon as the Christians came there. Fucking strange. But when Columbus made his way there, a cacique from the island called upon Christopher Columbus by name when they got to Hispaniola. And this is how Columbus knew that he was in Hispaniola, because of the Indians were calling him by name. They're like, hey, Columbus, what's up, man? He's like, hey, the fucking guys know you. It's like, they know me from last time. Pretty interesting shit. So the Christians sailed on the coast more and were greeted by some more Indians that came aboard and told the Christians that the other Europeans from the town of Isabella in Hispaniola came over to visit them, and everything was cool. And they were like, we hung out, everything was fine. Your fucking European dudes came over here, talked their Jesus shit. We all hung out, and fucking Columbus and his guys were like, fuck yeah, man. And they wrote that shit down. That Christians were happy about the described accounts from the Indians. So anyways, Columbus went sailing further down. Then Christians met up with another group of Indians that were ready to attack with poisonous arrows and rope to tie the prisoners up with. And fucking Columbus was like, fuck that, man. So he sent some of his men to fucking see these guys, and the Indians quickly gave up and threw their weapons on the floor right before the battle even took place. It's like, fuck it. These Indian soldiers then started to their habitual generosity, right? Giving the Christians food and drink and all this shit. Strange fucking days, man. So anyways, the Christians sailed on and reached an area the Indians called Aramane. And here they witnessed an eclipse of the moon at night. And after a few days, I went to another area that the Indians called Amona. And from here, Columbus was going blind from his sickness. His memory was worsened from the sickness and exhaustion, and his fever was getting worse at this moment. They were fucking almost there. The men on the 3 ships with Columbus decided to take Columbus back to town of Isabella and instead of stopping at all these fucking islands. Stop checking out all these Carib islands. He's like, dude, we got to take it back. So when they got to Isabella, the health of Columbus got better eventually. And this is when things started to get crazy. Like I mentioned in some of the last episodes, I wondered what happened in Hispaniola during the time that Columbus had left his brother and others in charge. And as I had assumed, through little written evidence, that things didn't go well on the island. And Columbus made his brother the governor of the Indies. And when Columbus made his way back to Hispaniola, Bartolome told Columbus to take it easy and relax so he could recover his health. But at that time, the Indians were in revolt across the island. And Christopher Columbus left others in charge to keep the peace. But he returned to a bunch of fucking noise, right? There is an excuse that the Indian revolt was due to a misconduct of Pedro Margarit. See, Columbus left 360 men there and 14 men on horseback to keep the peace on the island. But when he came back, Columbus came back to the island, there was a lot of bad energy, a lot of fucking blood. Columbus thought about the area of Cibao that Columbus thought that he would acquire a lot of wealth from, that he hoped that the Europeans would have kept peace there. But just the opposite fucking happened. He's like, dude, I left you guys in charge, and he fucked everything up. Pedro Margarit, at some point went to the council in Isabella to persuade the council in his favor of his wrongdoing towards the Indians, which in turn left Pedro an enemy of the Europeans and the Indians who now attacked all the Christians. Pedro wanted to be a supreme commander, but he was denied. This is when war started. And as a result of Pedro Margarit, the Spanish then tried to rob the fucking Taino and then steal the women at various times for sex. This is where Islam can point the finger at the Christians for doing similar things. You're like, see, motherfuckers, you did it too. It wasn't just a Muslim thing, it was a Christian thing too. The Spanish then gave little respect to the population of natives, causing them physical harm to where the Taino would retaliate by fucking killing and burning houses down. They once burned a house of the Europeans where 40 fucking Europeans were sick and laid in rest. And a cazique from Magdalena named Guadiguana killed 10 Christians. And Hispaniola has now become a chaotic, bloody fucking mess. And when Columbus returned to Hispaniola to return his health, this is what he was greeted with, these bitches. Columbus got to Isabella on September 29th, 1494, but was held up for 5 months in recovery, assuming that he was up and more healthy by the time of, say, in March of 1495. Columbus wrote that he wouldn't sleep more than just 3 hours for the whole fucking week. He was in bad shape. And when in health, Columbus had to take matters into his own hands. And when in time of war, in the fashion they did in the 15th century, Columbus had a cazique, Guadiguana, severely punished, along with 6 or 7 other caziques of the area. Chaos was everywhere, and the Christians couldn't easily pacify the situation. And the Spanish had killed a lot of these caziques and Taino people. And they would have killed more if it wasn't for the return of Columbus to the island that stopped the fucking killing. Isn't that fucking interesting? Yeah, a lot of crazy shit happened like fucking during this time. Let me move my microphone up here. So Antonio de Torres took 4 ships back to Castile with Taino prisoners on February 24th in the year 1495. Columbus wanted to speak with some of these Taino, but he didn't have the chance because Torres fucking took him back to Spain already before Columbus had a chance. Bitch ass. Columbus returned to health, and Hispaniola was in a bad fucking state. He's like, you bitches. The Taino now morally hated the Christians. The natives refused to be obedient to the European law that now subdued the area. There were 4 principal rulers in Hispaniola, and so these 4 guys called the shots to all the fucking ruling caciques below them. And the whole population of Indians followed. And Hispaniola just became a fucking mess. That's right. The names of these kings was Caonabó, Higuanama, Behekio, and Guarianex. Each of them ruled over 70 to 80 fucking caciques and all the people underneath that. And Guacanagaríx, who was the king of the region by the town of Navidad, this king stayed friendly with the Europeans. And Guacanagaríx came to Columbus and told him that he is not participating in the war with the other kings against the Europeans. He said that the Christians are always welcome in his region. Although the king said that now that he had no part of killing the Christians, like always, the other fucking Indians started to attack this guy now. So the king, Behekio, and his people killed one of the Guacanagaríx's women. And Caonabó stole another one of the women, too. So Guacanagaríx asked Columbus if he could help him, if he could help this Indian get his people back. And get back the woman that was stolen by the other people and revenge the death of the others. And Columbus accepted to partner with this king into attacking the other tribes. Although Columbus still mourned over the people that were originally killed at Navidad, it was said that Columbus seen them as brothers or sons, and he wept every time he talked about the death of the Europeans from the first voyage. And Columbus agreed to partner with the king into fighting the other tribes. That he hoped that this would lead to conquest of the island for the reason to punish those that were part of the rebellion and to punish those that killed the Christians. And so there's no more Mr. Nice Guy with Christopher Columbus, right? So on March 24th in the year 1495, Columbus declared war, basically, right? Columbus left Isabella with the Taino King Guacanagaríx and 100,000 Taino soldiers, is written, along with only 200 Christians. How the fuck did they count that many guys? There were so many people that Columbus divided his army into 2 groups, while his brother led one half. And this tactic was what the army would, how the army would attack from 2 different directions, one from the front and the other from the back. So they came to the area controlled by the Taino King Caonabó and attacked from both sides. And the Indians were fleeing from war, trying to escape from the battle, while the fucking Indians and the Europeans were attacking them. And Columbus and his allies killed many of the Caonabó's people and captured a lot of the others, 2 who were then later executed. But King Caonabó, of course, was captured along with his sons and a group of his women. And Caonabó was later taken back and questioned. And supposedly he admitted to killing the Christians who were left with Arana in the town of Navidad. Supposedly. I don't know how true that is, but did they assume that he said that? Or did he tell them that out of anger? I guess we'll never know. Or did the Christians make it up? You're like, this motherfucker, he said it. You're like, did he really? But Columbus didn't want to execute such a high-ranking person, so he sent this Caonabó to Spain to have the king and queen there deal with this guy, however they chose, right? So there was finally now peace in Hispaniola, and after this battle, after this little war, things, of course, became a lot darker in regards to keeping the law and order in the area. There were only about 630 Christians in the area at the time, and many of them were women, and a lot of others were, half of the men were sick, and then there were some children. And there wasn't a lot of people that were there to support the European idea to run the island, but there was peace for at least a year upon that point. Columbus never drew it's written that Columbus never drew his sword for that whole year. Not once again since the battle with Caonabó. Although he did get people of the island to pay a tribute to the sovereigns of Spain every 3 months. And in the area of Cibao, every person over the age of 14 was required to pay a large bell full of gold dust. In other regions, they had people had to acquire 25 pounds of cotton. And they had the Europeans had these manufactured these discs of copper and brass, and these discs were given to the people who had given this tax payment. And the discs were a type of receipt to show their payment. And for those who didn't pay, were going to be punished. And it doesn't describe how their punishment was at this point. So some of the Christians weren't fully happy with what had come with Hispaniola, but they used the excuse that if the Taino wouldn't have initially started the war, then things wouldn't have come to what it had became. And although the Christians didn't mind that finally the island was so peaceful that the Christians could walk anywhere in the island safely without the fear of being attacked. And some of the Christians even had some of the Taino now carry the Christians around on their shoulders. Fucking craziness. Hispaniola had now changed in essence. And a lot of what happened in the course of a few years that led to, it's just crazy. Just like from 1492, 3, 4, shit was fine for the most part until the 1495, when the Taino now had become the second-class citizens of their own home. And punishments of the time were that of what was common in that era. Being that there was war and enemies, and that the conquered people were now disrespected, right? There's always a lot of historians that claim that they don't know of any harm Christopher Columbus had done with his own hands. But now we have an account of Christopher Columbus that participated in the war against Caonabó and his Taino people. And of course, Columbus wasn't on a killing spree, because it is noted that he didn't draw his sword for the duration of a year up until that point, right? Bartolome de las Casas said that the mistreatment of the natives didn't begin until after the death of Queen Isabella. But as I had mentioned in that episode, that there may have been more to the story, and now a lot of you are saddened. But get the memoirs, bitches. Do some research. It isn't as plain as Howard Zinn made it out to seem, as if a bunch of Christians came to America and just started killing people and causing other atrocities. But there's more to it than that, isn't there? And now you have what was exactly written evidence from the year 1495. Adios.